15 minutes, okay. I don't want to necessarily fill time for the sake of it, given the good things that are waiting for us. Anyway, my name is David Jablonski. I am a history teacher at Multicultural Academy of Scholarship in Little Village, Lawndale. And I teach AP US History and Contemporary American History. And I mention that because when I considered what to do for this particular project and trying to teach a lesson, I wanted to choose something that was relevant to my content area and my specific classroom. We as a group looked at the huge Library of Congress website, the primary source nexus, but now it was a good opportunity for us to then go forward and consider what's something that we could use and then apply to our classroom. In teaching AP US History, one of the particular units that is sometimes difficult for students, and it popped up on the exam last year as the document-based question, is something known as the Gilded Age. How familiar are we with this era of American history, the Gilded Age? Yeah, right. So it's one of those. It's one of those that we get it in there somewhere. It's not something like the American Revolution, the Civil War. We all pretty much have gotten experience about the World Wars at some point. So as a teacher, I have to consider that and also consider what are my deficits in knowledge. So in going back through the variety of different materials up on the website, I came across something that related to the primary sources within the Gilded Age era, what kind of strategies are suggested. And one of the ways that I wanted to address this era is look at political cartoons, so that students get some images that resonate with them and bring some of those key vocabulary words, people, to life, so that that information can stay in their head, and maybe some of those images, some of those publications can resonate with them as they move forward into future units. Because especially in the AP class, such a huge part of it is memorization, and then it's applying those details through well-honed skills, particularly writing. So if I can give a bit of background into digging through the website, what the experience was before we get into the lesson itself. So that's how I came to the materials, finding out I wanted to look at the Gilded Age of political cartoons specifically. And then it was considering this database, particularly the publication known as Puck. So this publication, Puck, is a color humor magazine from the turn of the century, and it has all kinds of interesting images where particularly this guy, the editor, Joseph Kepler, talks about, demonstrates the big social issues of the time, political questions and so on. So clicking that link, we go onto the website and we see that there's thousands upon thousands of these images. So I had to sort of search and kind of find some of the ones that were best. We're going to quickly look through this reading that references a variety of them. It was unfortunate to see some of them hadn't been digitized, so I imagine a lot of these are on display. You can see them. But wanting to pull some of these specific ones, I had to go to some other sources to find what materials would be best and applicable to my students in the classroom. So one negative from the Library of Congress is that they got so much stuff, not all of it's up there. The other thing I might want to offer for any of you teachers that are trying to sort through so many of these voluminous documents is that sometimes it's hard to search for them. So if you know the title of these, it's much easier to do that. So researching something like Free Trade Bugaboo, and you look in the magazine Puck, you're going to get what you look for. But if you search President Roosevelt, you might have to go through a few pages to find exactly what you're looking for. So be aware of that if you guys look to make use of those materials. In terms of the positives, the images are very strong, high resolution, which is something that we don't always find if we're just searching Google. Things are resized, they're not always accurate. And the other big thing that you mentioned, Jennifer, was the fact that we have the sourcing information. As we want to teach students to be able to cite their sources, something that is very important in college. And Latoya, as you as somebody with library science background, know how important that is. So these are some specific things we want to be conscious of moving forward, and the Library of Congress provides us those resources. We have here the reading, and this is what was suggested to be used on the website. by the Library of Congress, and it gives us an introduction to the Gilded Age, and specifically the Gilded Age through political cartoons. So it previews some of these things. Now, I might advise any of you that implement this in your classroom, go through some of the basics of it. Have students read over the chapter, the section that's relevant to your content area before jumping into the political cartoons, so that they're comfortable with these big concepts like robber barons, what does industrialization mean, what does urbanization mean, so that they can apply some of these specifics. As you guys might anticipate, there's some real specific stuff in there about tariffs, about the issues around a presidential election that is not as memorable as the election of 1860 or something like that. So as a teacher, you want to make sure you have your ammunition before you come in and push some new thing to the students. Let's see, I don't want you guys to just read this, but maybe I can give you a couple minutes to skim over it. If you can at least share one kind of aha moment or something you found that was interesting for you, that you can take away from this time period, it'll give us a lead into the next exercise.
Are there pictures to go with this?
I have some pictures for the exercise. We would end up be doing a jigsaw in a bigger group.
Okay.
One of them referenced in here, I think maybe a couple of them. But I have some other ones as well. So.
And you're doing well on time, you have 8.
8 minutes, okay.
Yeah.
So maybe if you guys can take a minute just to skim over the document and, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, you said pick one, I got one.
Oh, okay.
Your aha moment.
You're an overachiever.
Wow, okay, very nice.
No, that's wonderful.
I know, it's so funny.
Does anyone need another minute? We're about ready? Okay. Is there anyone that wants to share whatever they found interesting first? Go ahead.
In the article, and as refers to the Gilded Age, I thought it was important they compare it to today's cartoonist attitude toward gender, race, and ethnicity on the back. Like maybe third paragraph down. And quotes that one aspect of the Gilded Age that it is very important by comparison with today is the cartoonist attitude toward gender, race, and ethnicity, said Mr. Katz. For the most part, anybody who wasn't white male was treated very harshly in these magazines. The publishers of these cartoons are largely establishment figures who persist in promoting racial, ethnic, and gender stereotypes.
Now, is this the Nast from Condé Nast?
Thomas Nast.
I know, but is he the predecessor of the Condé Nast publication group? Because Condé Nast is a large publication group, international magazines and other print publications. I was just asking.
Oh, it's
Only because he's in here as a commenter, and I was just wondering, was this just, you know, like the family?
Yeah, I can't speak to the connection. Thomas Nast is probably our most famous political cartoonist in probably all American history.
I bet you that's that same family because I bet you.
If they're still involved in publications today, yeah.
I'm gonna look it up.
Cool.
He's said to be the one behind the donkey and the elephant being representations for the the political parties that we have today. Uncle Sam was popularized through his particular art. The word nasty itself is rumored to be traced back to him. And he was publishing for years for Harper's Weekly. So he's a really big name. But Puck was really the focus of this particular activity, and that's the great resource that the Library of Congress has. And Puck is in color, which also, if you can use color with students, it's better than something they have to squint to see and try to understand what they're reading. Did anybody else want to share any comments? I guess
sort of piggybacking on Latoya's, I just thought it was really interesting the reiteration of, look at, there was a lack of confidence in public officials and a great deal of concern about immigration. And, just looking at what's going on right now, it's just such a perfect mirror, or just a different place to be able to look at similar issues, different time, similar issues. And so I just thought that was an interesting thing to be able to look at.
Yeah, I like how it was framed that way, because anytime you are able to bring those current events, those issues into the classroom, and in my community where I teach students, immigration is always a hot button issue. Students are well aware of when there's a march taking place or if there's a law that's up for discussion. So anytime that you can bring in some of these immediate things to bring history alive is a powerful opportunity.
One of the other things that I noticed, in today's society, with all of the media and technology and such, there's just no real privacy and so on. And a lot of times people today lament the fact that in times past the media was not so intrusive and invasive in our lives and so on. But then I found this, and it was like, for anyone who thinks politics is dirtier today than a century ago, take a look at Frank Beard, another voice from Cleveland.
Right.
I thought that was so appropriate. Because, remember they always would talk about Kennedy was just, a lowdown. But nobody knew.
Oh, everybody knew.
Well, no, but I'm just saying, just in terms of the media reporting,
Right.
had that been today, that would have been, all over the world. But then they kept everything quiet. And for some reason, now this happened in 1884. I'm talking about 1963, which is like 100 years later. Somewhere in there they got quiet, because there are a lot of things that went on in the early turn of the century that were kept hush-hush, that now all of a sudden it's everybody's personal business. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be late.
Those are very good points you're making.
I just found that was so
No, it's cool.
interesting.
I agree.
I think one other thing I want to add to the comments about immigration. The thing about political cartoons is they're visual media. So when we consider immigrants, at this point in time, they're coming largely from parts of Western Europe and to an increasing degree Southern and Eastern Europe, and then some Chinese. People are able to see a caricatured picture and know that this is an unflattering image. And you can get a message across in a more public and popularized way than you might be able to with an editorial. Sure, 2 minutes. Okay, so let's move on to. I'll describe the activity that you would do in your classroom. What I have done is I've sorted out some political cartoons from this database, and I grouped them. And for sake of time, maybe I'll just introduce how I would have done it. But there we go. Label this 1A and 1B. This was one of the ones that was referenced. You guys might see here. We have the Irishman and the Chinese man. The Irishman and the Chinese man eating the Uncle Sam. And then this message here, the greatest fear of the period solved. So the Chinese man consumes Uncle Sam and the Irishman, and wears the Irishman's hat. And you see the Q in back. So students have to look carefully and see what actually happened there. But this was published in San Francisco And if you've taught the Gilded Age, for the students, they might be aware that the Transcontinental Railroad's being built, that Chinese are coming into Angel Island and they're trying to find work. So this particular message is that the Chinese are really going to be the victors of this great cultural clash. I've paired these, and you can do it more depending on what you have. So these kind of fit together with immigration. Students could then pick the category that those fit into. These speak to the idea of what government's about, a dog show here, and then the fat cats of trust, really operating what goes on in the Senate, the bosses of the Senate. Here we have the working class holding up this ship, and then also the fires are being stoked by big business, and the working man is being burned. And then lastly, the representation of robber barons here, the super rich, the big businessmen. William H. Vanderbilt of the railroads, the modern colossus of railroads, kind of a play on the ancient wonder of the world. And then Standard Oil is an octopus with its tentacles everywhere. So what I would do is then I would have students tackle these in groups. They would be paired up, and they would have to determine what kind of label this fits into. In this case, this would be representation of robber barons. And then here we would then use either this or some guided questions so that they could see what do we actually see, what is the deeper meaning, do some inferencing, and what questions still remain. We would report back to the whole class, and then there would be a graphic organizer so that they could come away with some big ideas around these big topics, politics of the age, the role of robber barons, immigration, and the idea of the working man during this era. And there's opportunities for extension activities from there as well. Writing essay, especially with consideration accounting for, is important to try to synthesize which of these is most accurate, which of these is maybe most exaggerated, because point of view in regards to political cartoons is often exaggerated. That's what makes them most effective. I know I'm tight on time. Does anyone have any questions about this? We got all our discussion out of the way.
Yeah, that was
Okay.
good. Thank you.
Thank you.